we have been reporting for the past couple of weeks on the failure of the Biden administration to deal, and not necessarily their fault totally. I'm talking just from a purely execution standpoint. I think there's some very good arguments that various policy decisions they have yet to make that need to be made, more so on the interior of the country in terms of dealing with undocumented immigrants who are here in the country already. But at the border, there's simply not the apparatus that's needed. Every year at this time, there is an increase in undocumented immigrants who are coming because in anticipation of the good weather makes it easier to travel, and there's more work associated with farming and et cetera, et cetera. And there is a lot of misinformation out there, and the media is doing their darn best to make this into some type of like broad crisis. And it's
having panels at the border.
Having panels at the border, which is sort of an amazing revelation that they could do that by bringing everybody down there, because the idea that there aren't, there haven't been over the past 4 years real issues down at the border. I don't know. That's pretty stunning. But here is, and we will talk more about that. Certainly by the end of the week, we're going to have some folks who have actually been down to the border and get a real sense of what's going on there. But here is a good example of a member of the media actually sort of calling some of the BS. Mehdi Hasan had Dan Crenshaw on his program. Dan Crenshaw, of course, taking a break from his Marvel movie parodies to come on and actually have a conversation. Here's Mehdi Hasan basically calling Crenshaw on all his BS.
So let's talk about what you and the Republican Party call the Biden border crisis, this idea that he created it since coming to office. Let me just put some numbers up on screen. You can see clearly from those CBP numbers that since the pandemic and since Title 42 was brought in to expel asylum seekers at the start of the pandemic, border apprehensions have gone up month after month. The truth is Joe Biden did not inherit falling numbers. He inherited 9 consecutive months of increases at the border. It's right there on screen for single adults and for families and kids.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're getting your data from. Look, in February, we had over 100,000 crossings. Back in November, there was about 800 people in CBP custody. Now there's about 10,000. Migrants will tell you, as reporters are interviewing them, that Joe Biden invited them. The drug cartels are passing this information along. Look, there was very specific policies that were reversed as soon as Biden took office. As you mentioned, that I said in our Twitter exchange. Our Made in Mexico policy, and really importantly, the asylum cooperative agreements with Northern Triangle countries. This basically reinstates a process of catch and release. When people think that they're going to come across the border, as long as they have a child with them and they're going to be released, then that's a huge incentive to come across, especially when they're going to get a bus ticket wherever they want, and now a hotel room, because that's what's being funded. So the incentives are pretty obvious, and we have to ask ourselves the question, is this a sustainable policy? And is this fair to millions and millions of people around the world who have valid asylum claims that now are getting clogged into the system and can't get their claims heard?
A lot of claims made there, which we'll try to unpack in the brief time we have together. I just want to stick to one. You said, I don't know where you're getting the numbers from. Let's just pull up the graph again. That is a graph from the American Immigration Council based on CBP figures. Those are CBP numbers. If we pull up the graph, I just want you to have a look at that graph we just had. That's 9 straight months. You can see their Title 42 expulsion.
I can't see the graph, but I can tell you, say I just got the phone.
Well, let me tell you, it's 9 straight months. Hold on, Congressman. 9 straight months of increases in immigrants being apprehended at the border. Joe Biden did not inherit
just to be clear,
9 months of fall.
Just to be clear, you're just denying that this massive increase happened in the last couple of months. We're just denying that?
No, I didn't deny there was a massive increase. I can agree there's a massive increase. Can you agree there were 9 months of increases prior to Biden coming into office? That's what the CBP figures would show.
These are not substantial increases. Look, I just got off the phone with one of the former CBP chiefs.
So that's what he keeps trying to rely on, anecdotal data. And later in the conversation, he goes, well, why don't you go down to the border? Why don't you go down to the border? Well, Dan Crenshaw, why don't you acknowledge the data that's put in front of your face that you keep questioning where it's from? Mehdi Hasan answers that question, he has no choice but to deflect because it runs contrary to his narrative.
I mean, to be fair, he very well could not. It's possible he's not seeing the graph because he's just talking into a camera.
Yes.
But he doesn't want to see the graph as well. But the bottom line is, look, as far as the reason why there are so many kids at the border, there is a Rule 42 that was instituted by the Trump administration that basically, on top of some other policies, that basically said we're immediately expelling, in fact, not even admitting for processing anybody who shows up at the border because of COVID. And in this instance, the Biden administration said we will not reject unaccompanied children. We will not allow them to we will not just shove them off and have them go off into the desert or just walk back into Mexico or whatever it is. The problem is they do not have the facilities or the structures in place to deal with these people, with these kids coming in. And that's why apparently they're looking to go to maybe airlift a lot of kids up to the Canadian border where there's facilities. We don't have the same type of situation there.
And Biden has kept Title 42 in place, which basically was it's the United Nations says they think it's illegal under international law because when people are seeking asylum, it almost automatically rejects migrants. Less than 1% were let through under Title 42 in the past, 365 days since this policy basically was in place. So, that's also categorically false. He did keep the bones of the Trump administration's policies on this front in place, and that's progressives like myself don't like that. That's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real mess there, and it's just a question of at one point, there's going to have to be this neither fish nor fowl type of policy is just not going to work. At one point, they're going to have to make a strong, definitive move and then just fight one essentially front in this sort of political war that is being waged on it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in just a moment with Chase Strangio.